Well, let's spend a few minutes going over the notebook for this course. The notebook is comprised of three main components. The first is the syllabus, and then at the very end there are 3 articles that you will be reading for the course. You don't have to go search them out anywhere. I provided them at the end of this notebook. And then in between those items are some other pieces of information that are essentially the PowerPoint slides, additional information, activities, instructions about doing some discussion groups and things like that. So let's go over the syllabus part at this point, just go over some general information. You have my email address. There is a website for the course where there are a few resources that I'll tell you about later on. The bulk of what you're going to need is inside of this notebook. The textbook for the course, you probably already have it, but it is the 4th edition of Knight's book. And then the learning objectives, each of those are designed to build upon each other to get us to this final piece of a philosophy of education based on your worldview that is personal. And we'll talk a lot about that as we go through the course material from week to week at the end of November and December. Initially, we're going to talk about what it means to have this idea of a philosophy related to an educational philosophy related to a worldview. We're going to deal with some terms and ideas about worldview that may be new to some of you or maybe not as common as some other terminology, but that's okay. We'll need that in order for us to then understand how these dominant philosophies have had implications in the classroom in the last several decades. And from that, we want to be able to analyze the assumptions that these philosophies have made about a philosophy of education. And then that way, you'll be able to articulate an understanding that has some depth related to your own worldview, moral and faith development, and then how does that specifically relate to one's philosophy of education. The learning outcomes for this course, there are 5 of them, starting with the beginning questions. You're already familiar with that, and we're well on the way with accomplishing that goal. The second are reading summaries. There are 3 of them, 1, 2, and 3, that are explanatory here. I'll go over them in more detail as they come up. You'll know well in advance when those are due. There's something that I'm calling a check for understanding that's a mid-year opportunity for you to do a constructed response to let me know where you're at as far as your understanding of some of the concepts within the course. And that'll be a constructed response, and I'll talk about that again later on. But that's the 3rd objective, learning objective. The 4th one is a group activity. It's, you'll have a lot more information about as we get to that, but that'll be a small group activity that you will accomplish and share with each other and with me, and that'll move us in towards then some of the last things in the course, and in particular a personal philosophy paper, which is the culminating activity for this course. One of the things you want to make note of is that it's due on December 18th. So you'll have a few days after the end of the course to accomplish this and get it in. And then I have to have grades turned in a couple days after that. There is a rubric that I'm using, and I've also put here some guidelines for developing the paper. We will go over this in great detail as we go through the course, especially towards the end, so you'll be very comfortable with what this is expecting when we get there. There is a rubric that has scoring for each of the different elements. You're familiar with rubrics, so you know how this works. So your points will be generated by how well you meet the different expectations from a 3, a 2, a 1 for each of the elements that are described here. There won't be any surprises. You'll be able to put this together without much difficulty. It may seem like a lot right now, but trust me on this one. The scale score relative to the percent score is listed here. Again, that is not that big of a deal. Most students in this class, because of how well we get through the program, are certainly going to be in that area that they want to be in for the grade for this course. A few other items, just a note related to turning in digital items. That's an expectation at this level without much explanation. Attendance, well, this will be attending the video conferencing activities and the discussion activities that are a part of this course and very, very important part of this course. Because we're so limited in time, we definitely need to make all of the classes and make sure attendance is a high priority. You can see the assessment of achievements, pretty straightforward. And as most syllabi should have something related to plagiarism, we're going to communicate in this course primarily through email and video conferencing, just because of the nature of this class being halfway around the world. Submission of assignments will be through Dropbox. Most of you are familiar with that. You'll have some specific information, and there's a help video related to that that will be helpful for those of you who aren't as familiar. Once again, I'll be using Jupyter Grades for the online grading, as we did in ED 5000 for those of you who took that course with me. There's another video that will cover many of these things, so that if you're not sure what I'm talking about at this point, no worries, you will. The next item I want to go over, this is the schedule for our interaction together, and it starts prior to our first meeting on November the 22nd, that Friday. There are some things that you will be accomplishing ahead of time, and there's some videos that you'll be watching. There'll be a welcome video that will go over a little more information. We're already right now doing the course overview and syllabus, so if you've seen this, you're already taking care of that. There are help videos for creating Dropbox and doing some other things that I'll direct you to. And just to remember, it's the same password that we use for the other ones. It's educate with a capital E and an exclamation mark at the end. So those are the things to do prior to our first class meeting. And then we will meet on November 22nd, that Friday, and we'll go over the things that you see listed here each of the times that we get together. You will notice on the right hand side that there are some notes for expectations of things that you will accomplish before we actually gather for the course. So just take a look down the right hand side with the associated dates relative to that information so that you're ahead of the game. And again, if you have any questions, you're going to be able to email me and get clarification as needed. But it's pretty straightforward. That takes us through Saturday, December the 14th. And then, as I said, the philosophy paper is due shortly after that, which is the final activity for the course. Then on page 9 begins the actual activities for the course. So I'm not going to go into this right now. We'll go into this more when we get together with video conferencing and go over the portion from this point down through the end of this document. If you have any questions about what we've just gone over, feel free to email me and I'll be able to clarify for you. I look forward to interacting with all of you sometime in the near future, where we will be engaging in this idea of a philosophical foundation in education.